All right, and slideshow and play from start and whew, it's happening. All right, Bobby, you're on.
Welcome everyone to Virtual Adventure Therapy for Skilled Practitioners. My name is Bobby Beal and I work at Case Western Reserve University, and I also work with Mari Long at our Business Life Adventures Counseling and Consulting, and my little niche of it over here in Ohio, Life Adventures for All. We're so glad that you could be with us, and we're so happy to have this group of people that we can share this information and curriculum with, because we have found it to be super helpful, especially given our current state of affairs with COVID-19. Mari?
Yeah, so today, the opportunity for today, it will be interactive. You'll have time to ask questions, a couple of breakout groups to have some smaller group chat. You will get a recording of this version, so feel free to take notes, but if you just want to hear it all over again, you'll have a link to the recording. You will also be sent 6 lesson plans for families to do virtually and 6 lesson plans for individuals to do virtually. So you get both of those. And then there's like a, what do you call your tip sheet, ready sheet?
The quick guide.
The quick guide. You'll get a little quick guide. Obviously I use that all the time. For a handy dandy quick version. And then there will be a link to sign up for your 20 minutes individual consultation with Bobby and myself, or one of us, kind of depends on when you sign up for it. That 20 minutes is really time for you to say, like, how do I apply in my particular setting or with this particular population, or maybe you just have a specific conversation that you want to have with one of us. Generally speaking, I would say wait like at least a week or 2 for you to digest some of this before you set that up. I'll have times set up for about a month and a half, because you'll want to be able to really think about, how am I going to process this, and how do I want to apply it, maybe test some things out. We found, like in the coaching sessions that we did, Bobby, we found that it was a good 2 or 3 weeks really before people started having questions after they were testing it with the OTC program.
It's true. Or they could just use my favorite call to Mari. Mari, I have to work on this. What's 3 activities I could do?
My brain does have that little Rolodex of like this.
She does. 1 billion activities in that brain.
There is. And then finally, you'll have a link to the evaluation. We would be happy to receive your feedback. We really selected this session because so many people are reaching out to us and asking, how do we do this, both with families and individuals? So I don't know if either of us really planned like, hey, this is what we want to do, but it was response to, how do we do this? How are you managing that? Anything you want to add to that, Bobby?
Yeah, I mean, I think I woke up in March and started to panic and thought, we're never going to be allowed to do adventure therapy again. And then right away, we were talking and consulting together and said, oh, we can do it. We should do it. It's going to be better for people, and let's share it.
Yeah. So, I love this little picture. Makes me smile every time I say it. I do miss some of our hula hoop activities. I haven't done a lot of those virtually, although you can, by the way, if people have a hula hoop. This quote I picked out because as Bobby was talking about in March, when we're thinking about, we're never going to do adventure therapy again, or it's not going to look the same. And I find that I'm like really technology reluctant. I'm like, I don't want to do a virtual session. What is that? The whole piece that I love about adventure therapy is the shared experience. But what I have found is that there are some benefits to the virtual relationship as well. We certainly will talk about here some of the adaptations and things that have happened, and some of those like learning lessons that we've figured out along the way. But there are some benefits that have happened. I've had family members that have shown up to a virtual session that have never been to my office because they're like, oh, they're there. I'm just watching in. One family I had, I didn't even notice that he was watching in for 2 sessions. And the 3rd session, he started piping up. I'm like, who is that? And so I think in some ways it can be accessible to people who might not have accessed our services before.
Another thing I want to say along those lines, Mari, is that the research says that if we offer our clients options, options of treatment, options of how to connect, options of what kind of services they get, they are far more likely to engage and stick with it than if we just say we have this one thing to give you.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine not just because of COVID, but because of other accessibility issues, integrating virtual sessions in a variety of ways. You know, I think about some of the wilderness therapy programs that are working with parents or families at a distance. How great would that be to really match or align that experiential therapy in those virtual sessions, just as if they're doing the adventure therapy on site with the youth that they serve. But I also think for some of my clients, rather than missing a session, we might be able to do something virtually and get that, you know, repetition a little bit closer together for those options. All right, our agenda. We are going to look at curriculum and review some lesson plans. Well, we're going to speak a little bit to the content. I think this is where we're really aiming that you all as some experienced practitioners have some content, but there's some places that we want to make sure that we have some common language. And there's some content pieces that we found that have been really helpful that are not necessarily common in adventure therapy, but could be, and are particularly helpful for that virtual setting. And then of course, the majority of this, or I forget what word you called it, Bobby, because my words are just not working as well as they typically are, about the tips. Like that's really the place that I think is helpful. Things that you can't even think about knowing to look for before you do a session.
Right, and we wouldn't have been able to put that tip sheet together, that slide that you're going to see in a few minutes here, if we hadn't have already started doing this and getting feedback from the other people that we're working with about what do you need out there.
Yeah, I'm wondering, because all of our sessions start off with a gathering check-in, Bobby, if we should just shift there. We've talked for a few minutes, and let's give them that chance.
I agree. How's your participation count? Did we get a few more people?
We do have a few more people.
We did. All right.
Yeah.
Well, you work on setting up that breakout room, and let me tell them what they're going to be doing there. We'd appreciate it if everybody turned on their camera if possible, and you also will need to unmute yourself, and Mari can unmute everybody as well. But we're going to throw you into a breakout room with, I don't know, 3 to 5 people, Mari?
Yeah.
And you're going to start with a gathering activity, or really a check-in activity, and it is called Radio Station. And so you're going to share, if you were a radio station, which station would you be and why? Is there a second part to that, Mar?
Yeah. What radio station would you like to be right now?
Oh.
And why? And it might be the same. It might be different, right? And then maybe a little bit about what do you need from yourself or from others to help change that station. And if a station is a little too esoteric for you, you can pick a specific song or a style of music. I think I usually end up going to a style of music because
I think
how would you know what 89.7 station was? But you have all those options: station, specific song, or style of music that represents where you're at right now. Where do you want to be? And how would you change that?
So that's where we're going to start. We're going to give you 2 to 4 minutes to each check in with each other in your group. And then I'm going to post a question in your breakout room, and you guys can chat about that before we call you back. So you'll be gone from us probably close to 8 minutes before we bring you back in. Go ahead, Mari.
There you go.
And unmute everybody.
It is still fun watching them like delete themselves.
Yeah. Rhonda, what happened?
Rhonda and Colleen are frozen, so it looks like they're in process maybe. Although Colleen has not joined yet. Nope, neither of them have joined, so I don't know if they're floating. Colleen's now in her group. Colleen.
And so's Rhonda.
I still see Rhonda.
I don't.
Oh, there she's gone.
Okay.
And you didn't join.
Mari, you have to do the breakout question because I don't have it. And here's your question, but don't send it for 2 more minutes at least.
Okay.
What is your biggest challenge or worry about implementing virtual adventure therapy? and I don't know, do you say discuss it or brainstorm around those concerns? And it is 3:14. You sent them about a minute ago. So we'll give them 3 minutes to do their radio station business.
Rhonda's saying that she had a difficulty with the
Audio.
Yeah. And then I got a personal message. Louis said that one of the other students won't be making it or might be late, has a personal emergency. I'm just going to double check and see if there's anyone else that was trying to get in. I do have one, so I'm going to send them the link.
A link.
Where do I get the link from now? Amanda. Oh, I have from you. Amanda, we're in breakout room, so I will send you to a breakout room and they can help you from there.
Sorry about that. I had trouble logging in.
A couple of people have. No worries.
No worries.
I'm just going to use it from yours because you got into with the link that I sent you. You had no problems getting in, right?
Correct.
All right, I'll send it.
Somebody's here. Ibakala.
Oh, Lindsay, I just sent you another link. So Lindsay, you made it here. We're just getting started. We had a couple of people who had trouble getting on. If you're able to put your video on so we can see you. And I will unmute yourself. There you are. Can you hear us? Seems like she's having a hard time. I don't.
She doesn't appear to have video.
Right.
Usually they have audio though, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's usually the other way around, right? No. A tricky one. Okay, you have to. Are we ready to send that message?
Yep, 3:17, right on.
You'll
time.
have to give it to me again because when I went down, it took it away.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Share your biggest challenge or worry about implementing virtual adventure therapy or virtual AT.
Done. I have a new message. For some reason, I can't get the audio or video to work. Lindsay, I just sent you another link in your email. Try to log off and then log on by clicking directly on that link. And if that doesn't work, try to log off and then open up Zoom as general and put in, type in the meeting number. One of those should work. I'm glad you can hear us at least.
Oh yeah, she responded.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she went somewhere. Oh, she's logging off and back in.
Right. You'll have to monitor the chat because I don't see it at all when I'm sharing my screen.
I have it open on the side all the time now. So I'm fine with that. that Vanessa thought we were hysterical.
She's fun. Well, we are kind of funny. Some people were a little like, oh my gosh, who are these people?
Not Rhonda. She was ready.
It's good. We had almost 4 people in every room.
Nice.
I pointed out Louie to you.
Yes.
Check in.
I was looking at other people and I was like, I can't really remember. I mean, I remember most of your comments, but I can't connect them to people.
Vanessa is the one with the climbing brother.
Oh. Huh.
I don't know when I sent out that message.
I do. It was 3:18.
Okay, so we have 2 more minutes.
Yep, 2 more minutes, and then they'll have 1 minute to wrap up when you hit the, well, at least that's what mine does.
Yeah, mine gives a minute.
Yeah. You know, you can adjust that. Hey, it's Lindsay.
Lindsay, you made it. Okay.
You're talking, but you're muted.
Okay, now I'm doing it on my phone, so that seems
Okay.
to work.
That's all right. All you missed was just the opening overview, and they're doing a check-in, and we're about to send them back. So
Okay, perfect.
we purposely give a little cushion at the beginning because, you know, Zoom also had updates. So we had a couple of people that got caught in a Zoom update and couldn't join because their Zoom was updating. So the joys of Zoom.
Yeah.
It is also recorded, so you'll get a recording, so you can always go back and catch that
Okay,
those first few minutes as well.
perfect.
Which is
Take
mostly
it you two know each other?
no,
No.
Oh,
I'm just friendly.
where are you from, Lindsay?
Winnipeg.
Oh, I have a friend in Winnipeg. Lise Brown with Momenta.
Okay, I know Momenta, but I don't know that person.
I'm pretty sure she's one of the owners.
Oh, okay. I sometimes work with them when they're in the community I work in, but I probably not the owner.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's huge. I think they probably have, less than a dozen people.
All right, I'm going to close the room, Bobby, because I'll have a
Good
minute.
call.
I just got a text from someone, Bobby, their internet is down, so
Aw.
yeah. Look, all these people jumping back. Corey, it's nice to see you.
Oh, you too.
You weren't on my screen earlier. Now you're on my screen. I'm like, oh, there she is. It's kind of fun to have this mix of faces that are familiar from a variety of different environments, and then some that I don't recognize at all. I think we have a couple of people from Canada, which is exciting.
That is exciting.
All right. Let me get back onto our screen and start our slideshow again.
Welcome back, everybody, from your breakout room. And what I'd like you to do now, unless you've already resolved your challenge or your worry, put it into the chat for me. we're not gonna answer them all right this minute because we're hoping that we cover a lot of it as we go, but then I'll have a record of it, and as we get closer to the end, we'll go back and make sure we respond to that. So if you had a challenge or a worry about implementing virtual adventure therapy, please type it into the group chat.
Well, I'd say if they've resolved it, I still want to know because that could be helpful too.
That's true.
All right, so session plans. So when you get the lesson plans, it will have all of these components to it. The background information is really just a grounding so that we're all on the same page. It can be helpful for newer practitioners. I find that I use the background information sometimes with parents or some of my adult learners, or sometimes families that just need, or individual clients that just need a little more reasoning about, like, why are we doing this? Why are we learning this experientially? So you don't have to use the background information at all. It's really just a few highlights in each little session. And sometimes people want to say, like, if I want more information, where would I go with that? Bobby, anything else that you've used the background information for?
No, except the research says, because that's always my thing, the research says that the more information and supporting information and research and data you have about the stuff that you do makes you more confident and makes you a better introducer of all that kind of stuff. And so while we think we have great ideas, we don't want you to just do them because there are ideas. We want you to understand where they came from and what makes them a good fit.
I think you bring up a really good point about being confident, though, too, especially when you're doing virtual therapy, virtual experiential therapy, to say, like, hey, just test this out. Some of it's that modeling. What would that be like? The confidence that, as with any adventure therapy, whatever experience happens, you can use. It's just that there's a lot of unfamiliar things that are coming back. When I typically play Moonball, or when I typically am on a ropes course, I know a lot of the common, things that happen because I've been doing it for 30 years. But the first time I did Moonball online, I'm like, I didn't expect that. So it's a good reminder that might happen. Treatment goals. We included a couple of treatment goals just because some of you are working in settings that you have to figure out, how do you translate Moonball into a clinical goal on a progress note? So it's just to help stimulate your learning. I often find that if you have a draft from work to work from, it's easier to edit than to try to create one on your own. So the treatment goals that we listed are just samples. They're by no means like the only things that you could use from that. It's just the most common ones that we work with. Bobby, tell us a little bit about gathering activity. Why is it important to start off with a gathering versus, like, tell me what went wrong last week? Oh, I suppose you could do that as a gathering, but I would recommend against that.
Yeah, no, you do not want to do that as you're gathering. First of all, the gathering activity sets the tone for adventure therapy. It says we're going to do things as opposed to just talk about things or just report in. And so you want to do something with them right off the bat and set the tone for this being an experiential session. Secondly, the gathering activity can often give you a chance to read the room or to read the person that you're working with and see, how they doing. How do they seem today? You can check their mood, you can check their body language and their facial expression, and give you a better idea of who you're working with today.
I do find that with the gathering activity in the virtual, especially in the virtual learning, it's almost even more imperative because it sets the stage for this experience. When they meet me outside or when they meet me at the office, you have a natural physical change in atmosphere that allows us to make that change. But for most families or individuals that are meeting with me virtually, they're just turning on their computer. They haven't shifted where they are. And so it does help to create that shift to being present in this session. And sometimes I just think we need a little bit of respite. Most of the gathering activities I do are engagement and being more present. It's not like they're problem solving or frustrating. Sometimes They are, but they're not intentionally frustrating. I think that sometimes that happens.
One other reason that I usually front load everything with a gathering activity is not everybody's on time to everything. And it gives people an opportunity to still come in without missing the major part of the treatment, right? So you're just doing a gathering activity. If somebody comes in 10 minutes late and misses that, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, that's especially helpful for groups. If you're doing groups where you're likely to have a variety of arrivals.
Very true. And that's my biggest frame is group, of course.
Yeah. The check-in, I think often we don't take enough advantage of a check-in. So check-ins offer an opportunity for people to practice self-assessment, for people to practice sharing thoughts and feelings, for people to practice listening to thoughts and feelings of others, for me to do an assessment of where we're at right now. What is that point A? Where is our point B? That check-in place really informs how I change or adapt the activities or the challenge level or the questions that I might focus on. The check-in, I don't know, I just think that's that bit of information. I've gauged activity or involvement I've assessed that engagement and gathering, but I'm assessing like where are we at emotionally and cognitively in that check-in. Those two pieces really go together. That assessment piece helps to make the rest of your session really smooth. I like check-ins that are a little more experiential or metaphorical. I think that helps us stretch our thinking. We talk about problem solving and brainstorming and how do you think of things in different ways. Doing a check-in like a radio station or a car part or something like that helps us practice that flexible thinking. I also find that doing that experiential or at least metaphoric check-in allows us to stay away from a reporting of this is what went wrong last week or this is what this person did last week, or we might get a highlight of it, but we're not getting that list of problems.
Right.
Well, go ahead.
Nowhere in this is the question, tell me all the problems. And that's nice. You set the tone for we're going to move forward here. It's not that you don't ever want to hear about a problem, but that shouldn't be the main purpose of treatment, is not just to listen to the problems. It's about moving forward. Yeah,
and I think in adventure therapy, one of our favorite check-ins is the continuum, that line of continuum, where people say like go to one wall or the other wall or stand up. And you certainly can have your family stand up on a line, but virtually you can also have them move left or right on the screen. So you can, being creative with your thinking about how can I do some of my favorite activities virtually. A lot of that is just our own self-limiting of I haven't figured out how to do it. Most of them I figured out how to do, including some of the more traditional ones. Like I was telling Bobby earlier, one of my clients was paddleboarding with a GoPro while I was in my office. So we were doing a pretty traditional adventure activity in a virtual way. I did have to deal, what do you say? I had to deal with some of my jealousy that I wasn't on the paddleboard. Yeah. And I'm not sure I would do it the other way around, right? Like I don't want to be the one on the paddleboard while my client's in their bedroom behind the computer. Probably not a great
Right, no.
The next part of the curriculum.
Although, wait, now that just makes me think. What if we wore GoPros and went hiking and they were stuck inside? That would be a way to get them green space.
Okay, you do the GoPro. I have done a few virtual things. I didn't do it with the GoPro. And I think some of my students know this, that I did it with Zoom and I kept walking into trees. Like I'm trying to hike and walk along, but look at my camera. Yeah, it was funny to them too. There are some virtual tours though. I have done some of those as a gathering. We've done a virtual hike through like Machu Picchu. We did a virtual hike through the Nature Museum. Like there's a lot of places where you could do a little virtual hike as you're gathering your check-in activity. All right, next is the review toolkit and theme. This looks a little bit different for an individual than it would for a group. Bobby, I know we're going to revisit this, but what would the high level piece of this be for you? Like, why is this part important?
Well, it puts some structure around what's going on, and it reminds the family or the individual, we're part of this. We're part of this process. It's not you, the expert, telling us what to do. It is that together we're part of this. And so it's a way to include them in the whole process of the treatment. And it is different, though, if you're doing it with an individual, and we'll talk more about that when we get to this part.
Yeah, it does create
that's what it is.
Structure and continuity between them and goal setting.
Absolutely.
Mindfulness, the way that the lesson plans are set up, mindfulness is how we end the session. There have been clients that I start off with mindfulness just because of where we're at in the world right now, there have been sessions where we've paused an activity and done a mindfulness. So, you can move it around, but I do like ending with mindfulness as we transition back to whatever we're transitioning back to. But that's a pretty movable piece. And again, it's another one that I think that people sometimes leave out because they've run out of time or they're uncomfortable with it. I definitely find some people find that it's hard to like close your eyes and be watched with your eyes closed. So you can have people turn off their screens for that moment. Like that might be an option that you need to do, or turn off our own screen, depending on what, really it's on what the client's comfort level is. I did find that after about 3 or 4 sessions, people are like, oh yeah, whatever. I think we heard Vanessa talking a little bit earlier of like, yeah, this is just how I show up. At this point in the pandemic, most of us have so much Zoom experience that we're like, oh yeah, that was a cat in the background. Like it's just not novel anymore. So I found some of that anxiety going down related to that.
I find that the mindfulness helps with the transition out of therapy. Mm-hmm. Again, my biggest experience with adventure therapy was years and years of doing groups with behavior disordered kids. And at the end of our sessions, we'd throw them all into the gym and wait for their rides. And they were so wound up by the time we take them out to their cars and things that the parents were like, what? Why? They're worse. And so we had to shift and do some sort of calming and mindfulness activity before we return them to their parents.
Yeah, as a parent who like picks up my kids from some of these activities and they're like bouncing off the wall and they can't even get them in their seatbelt, I would appreciate those facilitators doing a little mindfulness before we get going.
So I think all that to say, sometimes you get to decide where the mindfulness activity goes. Do you need it to get them grounded and centered to be part of your session? Or do you need it to unwind and move out of the session and back into their lives?
And I think it's helpful for the practitioner.
And nothing would stop you from doing it twice.
Right. Practice, 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 rehearsal, rehearsal, rehearsal. As a practitioner, I found that, the sessions have been really heavy. There's a lot of stress. I'm exhausted from that. Doing this daily mindfulness, if I have 7 or 8 sessions a day, and I'm doing mindfulness 7 or 8 times, as well as my own mindfulness practice, it helps to regulate ourselves. Our clients are definitely more escalated during this time than, really than ever in my practice that I've seen. The experiential activities, we include 2 challenge or experiential or adventure activities in each session. You can break it up into 2 different sessions if you want to do one longer, or you just find that your family can't maintain a virtual session as long as an in-person session. The sessions are set up for about 50 minutes, but that piece, you can adjust that if you need to adjust it. And then the challenge to go is, what are they going to do between this session and the next session? Some people call it homework. Some people call it an experiment. What was the other one that we saw?
Road work.
Road work. You use challenge to go, so that's how we kind of landed on that. I almost always call it experimenting. So those components are all going to be in every curriculum lesson plan that you get. Woohoo. This is the place that, this is the place that we think that you really want to know about. So Bobby, you can see the chat, so we might have, come up against some of those questions. These are the main categories where we've really found that we've had to adapt things or pay attention, or what might be different, or how we enhance, or what we look at in a virtual setting versus an in-person setting. So technology. We saw it a little bit on this workshop. People struggling to get in. There's now passwords. You have to be updated. I know a few people who have been resisting updating their Zoom. That typically gets you locked into something or a feature not accessible anymore. So the biggest tip is keep your virtual platform updated. And that's an important piece, and reminding your clients to keep them updated. But of course, the next piece is go with the flow. If they haven't updated it and they're texting you and they're updating it, just breathe and go with that. We can use some of those experiences and relate it it is an in the moment experience to how is this similar or different. One of the families that I swear their virtual platform updates every time we have a session, I finally asked that question. She's like, this is just like dinner. I have this great plan for dinner. And I pull all these things out. Then my kid needs their diaper change. Then the phone is ringing. And I come back and like the butter's melting on the counter. And so we ended up, like, that beginning part was really about, the experience was really about how the technology struggles were mirroring some of the other struggles in their life.
Good question.
Yeah.
With technology and families, do you offer the option for each member to have their own, like how we have Hollywood Squares here? Or do you prefer that they're all squishing in on a screen? Do you give choice in that technological portion?
Yeah, so that's the very next one on the technology list, is options. So partly it depends on what you're going to do. Most platforms, if you're in the same room, you're going to echo within each other. So you don't necessarily get that group talk, or you get a chopped group talk. So then if they're in different rooms, then you're not going to be able to do the activities with each other, with the family. So groups almost always are going to be like this. It's kind of like Hollywood Squares or Brady Bunch kind of view. And the activities need to be shifted a little bit because the activities are really no touch activities at all. With families, for the most part, although I do work with families that it might be in two different places. So the kids might be in a different home, or dad is on a military base, or mom is traveling for business, or one of my clients is caretaking grandma while dad is at home with the kids. So their family is physically in two different places. We do use two, but we try to keep those people that are together. That being said, we definitely had, Bobby, we had lots of discussions. Do you feel like how far to put your video away using a phone? There have been times when we've had like one person hold the phone and they're like the videographer for, 5 or 10 minutes, and then you switch to another person. How to like back it up so that we could maximize our view. All of those are possible. Bobby, what do you want to add to that?
No, I agree with you. I just wanted to make sure that they heard that. I thought that same thing, Megan, that wouldn't it be handy if they each had their own phone or their own whatever? But the feedback is awful. And that automatically means they have to separate even further. And at least if you do family therapy, I think part of the goal is to get them to function together. And so usually not, unless you were going to try to have group therapy, in which case, just like we are here, you'd all be in separate places.
Yeah. Yeah. For most of my families, we find that they use an iPad or a phone because you can move it back and forth and you can move it around easier than a computer. That's just what I found. I have found for a few of my families, particularly with younger kids, they've put masking tape around their view square. So they helps the kids like stay inside this square. That's been helpful. I also have had to become okay with not being able to see everything that I can see in a session, typically in an in-person session.
I think that's the biggest thing. Corey?
What do you do? I had it several times where, especially with meeting with kids, where there's like parents in the room and you don't know till like halfway in. Like I'll say, are you in a private place? And they're like, yes, very private. And I've talked to the parents about it. And then halfway in, the mom's like chiming in to the session. Have you had that?
Oh yeah. Well, I was telling Bobby, like I had someone like sit in on 2 or 3 sessions and then they start chiming in. I'm like, who is that? And it's like one family member that I didn't even know was participating in family session until like session 3. And they've been sitting there the whole time off screen. Yes, I absolutely have that. I've had parents that sit in the hallway and they're texting me things to ask my kid, the kid that I'm working with, that they just overheard. Right. So how do I deal with that? It's really a clinical issue. I try to set up a parent meeting. We revisit this. Like, I know it must be really hard. Me as a parent, like I would be asking for everything that my therapist was finding out about my kids. But me as a therapist knows that our kids need a private space, and we respond differently when a parent is around or when we think that a parent is going to know something. So mostly I just shifted to a clinical role of like, what is happening for you? How can I best support you with this? Most of my kids under 8 or 9, have to have their parents set up the Zoom. Either they don't have passwords, or especially now that it's gotten a little trickier with Zoom, where you have to like click here and admit here and turn this on and put in this password. And it's just a little bit more tricky. Some of them can. My older kids definitely do. And then with one of my families, I have the parent text me when they're at least 3 rooms away from the room of the client. And then I start. So really it depends on the person, right? Like, Bobby, what would you add to that? Like, I just think it's a clinical issue, but.
It is, you're going to have to address it. It's almost always going to be a parent who's worried, and try not to be judgmental about it and address the worry, but that really it's hard to make a lot of clinical progress if they're being watched.
And I've had parents in my office, like, come and stand at the door between my office, and I see a shadow, and you open the door and they're standing there. So it's that same parent that's going to do that virtually too. I think virtually it's a little bit easier. If I know I have to be much more specific with my kids, rather than saying, are you in a private space? I'll say, are there any other breathing human beings inside the room that you're in? Or with one, I'm even like, Mom, if you're still there, you need to go out and close the door. I didn't hear the door close. We're waiting for you. Chop, chop.
Now, I will say that for me, this becomes an issue that should have been front loaded.
Yeah, it usually is front loaded.
Right. But I get that we all shifted to virtual treatment, and we didn't all start this way with all of our clients. So, but the more you can front load that, Corey, and talk about this is what therapy is, and for it to be effective, they have to have confidence that what they're saying is confidential, unless I think they're going to hurt themselves or somebody else, at which point, of course, I'm going to let you know. So the more you can address that stuff up front and get their agreement on it, the less that should be a problem.
And I usually tell them now, not at the beginning, but I tell them now, like, I know it's tempting to listen in, and this is why it's important. So I just acknowledge that might be tempting. And I also tell my parents, keep your phone next to you, because I will text you or call you if I need you to come into the video. So that's reassuring too. Or I text or call at the end of our session, rather than the kid going out, wandering out. Like, I will text or call at the end of our session, or if there's something that I need you to come back into the room for. So that also gives them a job, right? Bobby, you want to say a little bit about supplies and props? Particularly, can you talk about the difference between supplies and props?
Yes. So we had this little chat before we joined you all, and it was how do we view supplies and props? And supplies are things that get used up. So crayons and paper and note cards and things and like that. And then props are the little adventure equipment things that we use. So if you were doing live adventure, you'd have pool noodles and bandanas and all sorts of things. Now, because the family has to come up with the supplies, we try to make them all common household things that they might have around. So they might be using paper plates, and they might be using toilet paper for something, or they, whatever they have. But supplies are things that you use up, and props are equipment or things that get used for the activities that typically can be used again and again.
And I try not to start with a lot of supplies or props, but usually, because we've been doing virtual school, usually people have pens and index cards and paper, which are really common. And I definitely start with less props. I don't want them to have to figure out, like, well, what does she mean by I need a tossable item, or I need what did we ask for before where they needed a broom for that activity that they were trying to use sticks to get the ball into the basket?
Yes, funky dunk.
Yeah, which we usually use pool noodles for. And we can be really creative, but you need like 4 or 5 sessions in before you can have their brain creative enough to figure out what prop can you substitute in. I almost always send in an email, like my confirmation email that needs props, have this ready, because otherwise we spend the first 10 minutes of people getting props ready. You're still going to have families that happens. So, like, I know with one of my families, we're only ever going to do one activity because it's just going to take that time, and we're just going to reflect on that. Some other common household props. So we use tossables a lot. So if you get them to roll 4 or 5 socks into a ball, that's a nice, soft, tossable ball. That's a good one to do. Bandanas, some families have bandanas. Brooms work with sticks. Masking tape can be for almost any rope thing that you need on the ground. Although most people have some sort of like clothesline or yarn or some kind of rope that can be used for almost any webbing activity unless you're using the webbing for weight bearing. In other words, don't do the one where you're leaning back and they're using a piece of yarn to do that because they're just gonna fall. But when you're using it more for a structure, you can use almost any of those. I mean, can you think of any other unique props? I'm like looking around to see that we've done. Those are the big ones. The tossable one was the biggest issue.
The tossables is the thing, and we did that, and the stick stuff. Not really. I have had groups or people that I've worked with whose clients are in the same, let's say, school district or neighborhood, and so sometimes they will share props with them. They'll drop them off at the house, and then they'll leave them in a bag on the porch, and they pick them up another time. So if you happen to live that close to all your clients, you could do something like that. There's no, the evidence around COVID is we are not really catching it from those kinds of objects.
And some of it depends on the region that you live in. So, you know, here in Florida, I can almost always get a foam noodle. My clients, most of them have those foam noodles or beach balls. So I've been using a lot of beach balls instead of balloons because balloons are not in people's houses as much. But in our houses around here, most people have a beach ball. The other piece I would suggest, so, you know, me as a facilitator in my office, I've removed things that are knockable, breakable, notice things. You definitely have to have time where you say, walk around this space, remove cups, vases, lamps. We've definitely had several lamps knocked over. Those pieces that you attend to in person, but you usually attend to in a quieter way. Are you looking at a chat? Is there a question?
No, they're doing good. We got 2 comments when they came back, and we'll save them till closer to the end. We're good.
Okay. Structure. So Bobby, you and I talked about how in Adventure we have sequencing or structure anyway. And some of us use it just because this is the way that we've been taught. Some of us know a little bit more about like how structure is helpful for learning. Can you add in a little bit about like why routine now more than any time in our life is significant for treatment?
Yeah. So let me give you a little trauma-informed training in a nutshell here, folks. And that is we are all participating and subject to chronic traumatic stress. We used to talk about trauma-informed care as something we needed to be aware of for the clients that we were working with. And now we are all exposed to this kind of trauma. And it wears your brain out. Having to do everything novel, how you walk out into the world, how you associate with others and have to keep social distance. If you go out into public spaces, you should be wearing masks. And all of that novelty wears out your brain. It tires you down. And the thing that makes it bearable is routine. So one of the problems that a lot of families are having and a lot of individuals are having is it feels like there's no routine in their world anymore because they're not doing their job the same. Their kids aren't going to school anymore, those sorts of things. And so keeping to a routine is soothing for our nervous system, and keeping to a routine really allows people to know what's coming next, and there's no anxiety about it. So even though it feels sometimes like we don't need a routine right now because, you know, you could be in jammy pants or you know, whatever you want from the waist down and do your day at Zoom, it really is important, and it's not, and it's important for your neurological health. And our families very much need to know that routine is a thing that can be helpful. So even if you don't like strict routines and schedules, now is a good time to put some structure around your sessions with your families so they know what to expect, no surprises. Traumatized people do not like surprises. And it's very soothing to your nervous system to have a routine.
Yeah, and with adventure therapy, we love this novelness of it, but I try to leave the novelness to the play and fun, not to the surprise of like, guess what's happening to you today, right? Like I want to keep it connected in a very specific way. I also find that routine is helpful for us as practitioners. there's a lot of burnout that's happening. We've seen some of the stuff about we're on that invisible front line, and the heaviness of it. So even though I've written the session plans, I find that I still have to review them at a time. Sometimes I've just confused myself on what week I'm at, or who I'm working with. But to have an idea of where I'm going, because I have found that online I'm not as good at figuring out like where do I want to go next and having props right at hand. So I do find that I'm a little bit more predictable in terms of like, here's what I think I'm going to do and here's what I actually do, versus in my office where I have all these props at hand. I can see one thing happening, I'm looking to find something else, and there we go. I do shift around things with no prop activities because they seem accessible. And for me, I have that list of no prop activities that I might need to jump in on for frustration tolerance or fun or connection or communication if you see some of that come up. But really, you have to have that list of no prop because you don't have things immediately accessible to you. I also weirdly found that I needed a cue for attention, and I'm not actually sure why this happened, but for all of my families, it's chop, chop. And when I say chop, chop, they come back to their screen. And I know that partly because one of my kids says it at me, but I think that it is a word that's not familiar and it's clearly heard over the video. It's not something I'm accidentally going to say. It comes with a clap, and it's not like punishing or anything like that. It's just very specific. So all of my families have and clients have kind of gotten used to that. Families, because I say that's usually when you need to get attention, is when a group is doing something that you're not participatory in. And so I found that it wasn't so much jarring, but like so unusual. But now we're in like session 9, session 10 of doing this. I find that the families start doing that as their own, like, let's get back together. So instead of like circle up, which I did have a couple of people try circle up, and there's something about those words that are not heard as well over the internet line as chop chop. But now they do that chop chop and they all come back on their own. I know, it's so cute. Oh, Bobby, maintain authentic curiosity. We've been trying to be curious about this, but add in a little bit about what we were talking about.
So I think it's important throughout your work with other people to maintain authentic curiosity, which means you are seriously interested in them. You care about them. Now, you're in a caring profession, so I want to assume that we all have sort of a curiosity about people, but it is one of the best and easiest ways to connect and engage with people is to be authentically interested about them, about what they do, about how they handle things, about how they came to be this way, about what happened to them in the past, about what they want to be in the future. And that it's very hard to resist. If somebody is authentically curious about you and they're respectful and polite about it, they will draw you out. They will get information from you because it is a really good engagement tool. And when you're doing virtual work, you need to stay engaging all the time. As a matter of fact, we'll get to the questions that came from Marlena and Chelsea, but part of it was, how do you keep people engaged? And you keep people engaged by really being concerned and curious about them, and leaning in and saying, so what about this? And what do you do if this happens? And really manage to keep that interest in your clients visible, present in the session with you at all times.
I do find virtual work to be way more exhausting than anything that I'm doing in person. Even like paddleboarding or climbing or hiking, a virtual session uses more of my energy than that physical session does. Except for maybe roller skating, but that's because I'm still learning.
Well, one of the reasons that we find Zoom and virtual sessions to be more tiring than live sessions, because it does seem like if you were running around the room doing things with them, that would be more tiring, but it's not. The first thing is all the novelty, having to deal with the IT, and also you don't, even though you can see people, you don't have actual eye contact, and we do so much with actual eye contact. And although I can sort of see your faces, I can't see all the nuances. And so it's hard to read people's faces. You don't see the rest of their bodies. And all that is information that comes into us, and we adjust for it and deal with it automatically. And it's distant from us now. And so it makes it a struggle for us to feel like we're doing the right thing at the right time with the people. And so that's tiring. If you want to know more about virtual exhaustion, there's a great article circling around about Zoom exhaustion. If you just Google that, you can find something on it. Mari's not wrong. We are all more tired from having to be on Zoom all the time.
I'm not wrong. I'm glad this is recorded. I have you on record now.
I can edit that out.
What I was going to say is I do play with having people stand up and sit down and move around. That kind of goes to that expanded role, really being okay not seeing everything. There are times when I have them stand up and I might only see where their arms and legs are, but it allows me to see a different view of like, maybe they're folding their arms or tapping their foot. Like I don't always have to be seeing their faces. I might assign people in the group of, hey, I want you to watch for this. I want you to see if anyone grimaces or, you know, whatever it is. So I might assign observers in a different way. But breathing that you're just not going to see it. I mean, we don't really see it all in session anyway. If you think about more traditional talk therapists shifting to any kind of adventure therapy, that's one of the pieces. They're like, how can you see this person when they're climbing? How can you see them when you're walking side by side to them? So I feel like in a lot of ways, we are already trained to do that. We're already trained to notice and use the shared experience in a different way. Speaking of shared experience, do the activity with them. So let's get our brains to work a little bit. Bobby, are you ready? Put one thumb up and finger out. And everyone else can try this too. I love that Corey and Megan, who just happen to be who I can see, automatically just did that. Okay, now switch. Switch again. Yeah, you shouldn't have anything that looks like this, by the way. Switch back and forth 10 times. Woohoo. Gets our brains working a little bit. You'll even notice that I've done this and I still have to orient myself to where my camera is, because when I'm looking out here, you're not seeing both of my hands. And we have to do that. We just have to reorient. And I find that reorienting is a great skill to be teaching anyway. There is really an adapted role for the practitioner. And again, I think as adventure therapists, we have some of these expanded roles anyway of, you know, being a safety and risk management and, you know, ensuring some of the logistics in a different way. So we already have that, but I do find there's some expanded roles virtually of like tech help. I have learned more about how to get people on Zoom or restart a modem. Is that what it's called? I don't even know what it is. I'm like, go to that thing that's blinking and unplug it and plug it back in. I just, like, you're going to have to do some of those things that are a little bit different than what you might do in real time. Similarly, the expanded roles of our clients are different. Having them get the supplies. Not that I don't have my clients help me with supplies and props all the time, but it's a much more intentional decision of like, oh, I'm having this kid carry the props because they're usually like stepping on other people's feet and I want them right next to me, which is really different than I need you to get these props so that we can do the therapeutic activity. That piece is a little bit different. And there's an adjustment to that for sure in the roles on both sides. And Corey, I think your question really about like parents showing up is related to that expanded role of the parent of trying to get them online, right? Where otherwise they just have to get them to the office and then we take care of it from there. Bobby, what would you like else to say? I didn't do the very last one, which I wanted you to add to, but anything else about the expanded roles that you've noticed?
No, but I wanted to give you my best IT coach tip, and that is when people struggle, tell them to log off and back on.
All right, restart.
Yeah, restart. You'll get much further, much quicker than trying to fix it. Often it's just something wonky with the connection. So try that first. And then if you have to do something different, that's fine.
And I don't know why, but I've had much more luck with Zoom on phone and iPads than on the computer, even though the computer gives us more options. So me as the practitioner, I'm almost always on a computer because I can access the options of like breakout rooms and stuff like that easier, especially if I'm doing groups. But for my clients, sometimes phone is just the easiest because they're so used to being on the phone. if I can get my client walking and outside, I do that. And so they might have an outside session. Most of my family clients that I meet with, and even my individual clients, if they're not walking, they're still out in their backyard or, out a swing or someplace that's a little bit different, a little bit, just a different view, I suppose. All right, exploring implicit bias. Unpack that a little bit.
I'm going to unpack that a little bit. So research says that poor engagement or lack of engagement, the number one problem is our own implicit bias. And what that means is, how do we view people, especially classes and cultures of people? And our misinterpretation of them often results in missing that engagement. And so the more we can explore our own implicit bias about things, the better off we'll be. And if you want to explore implicit bias, you should Google it and find a place to take implicit bias tests. They're free. You can find them online, and it's going to show you that, yes, even you, a very open-minded therapist, has implicit bias. And the more we can deal with that, the more you're going to connect well with your clients.
Whew. All right, Bobby, you ready to move on a little bit?
Thank goodness, because I started staring at that little number 5.
Well, this will be a quick one. It's just the session outline. This is just to give you an idea of what you'll find. These times are estimated times. Of course, it might take your clients longer, or you have technology challenges, or they might be quicker. This is just a suggested what we found through the time. It also includes, like most people find printing this page out of your curriculum is really helpful because you can have it right next to you. It gives you the supplies, the therapeutic focus, both for you as a practitioner, what your focus is, and the family or the client, what their typical focus is. So it's really just that overview to help you get organized and sorted out. So in the description, it's going to give you a quick overview of that activity of what to do before you go to the procedures. It also will give you that purpose. So if some of you who need to write progress notes, that purpose piece is going to be really helpful. And I already talked about the time range. The supplies, it's based on common supplies available in the homes. You might have to adjust or change because of your client or what they might have available. Like we did an activity that I usually use with newspaper. Not many people get newspapers anymore. So we ended up using regular paper with one family, file folders with another family, paper cups with another family. So take a look at that, because you might need to think about, who am I working with? What supplies might they have, or be ready for, like when I send that email, I might say, like, I need at least 15 pages of something that we can fold and bend and tape. I typically use newspaper. You can use paper or scratch paper or paper napkins, or like I give them several options if they need to do that. The procedures will even give you specific things of, like, here's what you can say, and processing prompts. Here are some questions that you can have. If you're experienced, you won't need that as much, but if you're trying to get someone else to do it, or you're supporting someone who's doing it for the first time, that can be really helpful. And of course, we give you any sources that we use. So if you want more, like you like that activity, go to that activity book. Likely you're going to find more that's similar style in that book. Bobby, anything else that you wanted to say about that?
No, I don't think so. But remember, this is a core set of curriculum that we're giving you. And if you want more, you can go find other activities that would fit into this framework.
Right. Once you use the framework, you can do this. Fun. Bobby, tell us about fun.
Fun, so helpful. It's so good. Did you know that laughter is also a de-stressor? It's not just for kids.
What?
And
There you go.
Everybody needs some fun, and that includes you, and increasing their ability to have fun in their lives, or to set that as a goal to have fun. It's a good thing. It's therapeutic. It isn't like left out of the treatment. Treatment doesn't have to be boring and difficult. Treatment can be fun and engaging. And so try to ramp up the fun and allow time for reflection and laughter and things like that.
The challenge piece, one of the pieces that I found really different virtually is that I would sometimes, or often, I overestimate the challenge because I wasn't calculating enough in for how challenging it is to do virtually without me demonstrating as clearly or helping to like shift this way or creating that boundary or setting it up. So you always want to match the level of challenge with optimal learning. But I did find that I tended to need to start with a little less challenge. There are plenty of times when they've run it and they did it in like 2 minutes. I'm like, great, now that you have the practice round and we get how all the rules work, here's your actual challenge. Here's your next challenge. Like, you can do that. All of that is okay. These pieces that we have on the other side about identify, observation, experiment, enhance, those are all core to adventure therapy. Those are all the same. We're doing all those same things. We're watching, observing those skills. We're rehearsing them. We're enhancing relationship. We're experimenting with new ways of being. All of that is really true and doesn't change virtually, and it doesn't have to be left out virtually.
No, but I do want to say something about the level of challenge in our current pandemic environment.
Yeah.
And I'm all about challenging people usually, but right now I'm about helping them to feel some success. And so don't make it such a big stretch. When we were less challenged in our regular world, I would be very challenging in therapy. But now that we're all so challenged in the regular world, start small. Start with small challenges. Don't stress them out too much. People will more quickly tip over into frustration and anger. And I call that poking the bear. And sometimes that's what we need to do in therapy to actually work on managing those sorts of situations and emotions. But right now, they need more help getting to the I feel good place and I'm okay and I can do this. So keep your challenge appropriate for the person you're working with or the family and the bigger environment and culture.
Yeah, you'll notice that the activities definitely lean towards our more fun ones in our sample curriculum, partly just because I find that people need play right now for healing and respite. Ooh, our family team meeting. This is where we're putting that toolkit in. It goes step by step, but basically this toolkit is where you keep together your skills and observe the observations of what the family has learned so that they can pull these back out. And this toolkit comes from session to session, so it creates this transitional object. In individual therapy, I use it the same way, but we just call it my toolkit, and it's used from reflection from session to session. We typically use like an envelope or something to gather it and index cards. Bobby, what do you want to add a little bit about that? I know we're getting towards the end here, but I wanted to really bring this up because I think this helps, particularly right now, it helps to transition from session to session and connect the sessions to sessions.
It does, but for me, it also gives them ownership over the skills that they have learned. Have you ever worked with somebody or a family and you get, weeks down the road and you have to do a treatment review and you're like, what have we learned? And they're like, I don't know, nothing. And it's like, no, we did a lot of stuff. And especially with youth, I find that making them write down a skill that they learned and earned, looking at it a week later and saying, oh yeah, that's right, I can do this now kind of thing. It really helps to have them take ownership of it, and it ensures the generalization, the ability to use it in other environments besides just with you.
And we've couched it in this family team meeting because this is another place where we can model that piece of family team meeting where they can start doing their own team meetings at home. Individually, it's that same thing. Here's how we can structure reflection where you can do your own structured reflection on a daily basis. So it's a really transferable skill. You don't see this often in adventure therapy curriculums, but I think this is really a component that helps that stickiness to the skills that we're using. Moonball. This is just a sample. I wanted to give you a sample of an activity. So all of these activities are already adapted for how you can do virtually. So Moonball, you think of that with typically a beach ball or a balloon. I like to do the 4 or 5 socks. I even have them write on little tags. So I usually do this with balloons. So they write a strength on that and you roll it up and you stick it in the balloon. Here you roll it up and you just stick it in the sock. So it is all still there. I will say that socks move much faster than balloons. So the challenge is a little bit easier. Some are harder, really. Some of my families have, we have beach balls, so that works. I had several families that blew up gloves, like those little plastic gloves, and we used
That's so
that.
funny. I was waiting to tell you. I think they could use gloves right now.
So, and a sandwich bag. Someone's blown up a sandwich
Oh.
bag too, to use. I think that a Ziploc bag, a bigger gallon bag, might be a little bit better, a little bit easier, but we use the sandwich bag. So be creative. Now, individually, you can do moonball individually too. It's just not about hitting it twice in a row. Well, unless it's you, but it's that same thing of keeping something in the air without dropping. We set a goal. And then the next one, I might say, do it without their hands. Oh my gosh, that was the funniest thing to watch someone like hit it back and forth between their feet while they were sitting. I think the piece is that we often think of these activities only in a group setting, in person, and how do you shift your thinking? So our hope is not only that our ideas helped you, but seeing activities, at least 12 activities, shifted to how do you do this with an individual, and how do you do this virtually will help your thinking of like, yeah, pretty much anything you can adapt to a virtual setting.
Good, Mari, because that was a question from several people on the chat. How do you use these things within individual or individuals in several locations?
You use it the same way. Exactly the same way. So if you're going to do a group so that's individuals in several locations, you're going to use them individual curriculum, because that is all curriculum that you as one person can do, or you in relation to me, right? Sometimes I'm doing the activity with people. So groups that are where all the people are in different places, or individuals where it's just you and one other person, you do all of the individual activities. For the most part, it's just adapting it so that they're playing and having fun. I will say that you will be talking about vulnerability a little bit more, looking silly a little bit more. The more that you do the activity and demonstrate the activity, the more that creates space to be vulnerable and silly. That happens in families too, but I think families sometimes play more a little bit together than individuals do. And groups sometimes have that group pressure of I want to do what someone else is doing. So I usually try to like get someone in the group like, hey, when I ask for a volunteer, will you volunteer to do this? Because once you get one, you can get the whole group going. But individually, you really have to do the activity with them in order to get past that piece of vulnerability. Because our frame of reference for being on Zoom is like, I'm going to log into Zoom and then check my emails while someone is talking to me. Right? It's not actually doing something.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I just want to reassure Brian and Lori that the directions for the activities in the individual sessions are written specifically to be done virtually. So you're going to be, you get some written coaching on how to make that work virtually. In addition, you also have the opportunity to sign up for a quick consultation. So if you try it and you feel like, I don't know, I'm not getting how you do this with individuals, then that's definitely something we can talk with you individually.
And you have 6 sessions. Each session has a gathering activity, a check-in activity, 2 challenge activities, and a mindfulness activity. So you have 5 activities per session. So you have 30 activities that are all virtually set up for you to do in individual work.
That's a lot.
Challenge to go. Bobby, explain the challenge to go, because then we're going to put them in their breakout group to do their challenge to go.
Okay. So the challenge to go is at the end of your session. And what you want to do is have them focus on something that they learned, something that they came to an understanding about, something that they're able to do. And have them pick their own personal challenge, or Mari would call it an experiment, to do before they see you next time. So I don't know, let's say you were working with them on engaging with other people. They can have that be their personal goal, that I'm going to reach out to, even virtually, 3 people before I see you again next week or next session. And so the challenge to go is about setting your own personal challenge and then being ready to report back out on it during that theme or meeting time the following session.
So now in their breakout groups, what are they going to do, Bobby?
Well, what we'd really like to do is have you pick your own challenge to go. You've been listening to us for an hour and 15 minutes, and what are you going to do about it? how are you going to adjust your practice? What are you going to try? I know you don't have the curriculum in your hands, but you're going to within 24 hours. And so what's your personal challenge to go? And you can talk about that, share that with the people in your group.
All right. So I'm going to recreate our groups. Here you go.
And now you can take a peek. There were really only 2 questions. The ones I've addressed as we went along, that's fine. But there were really only 2 questions in that chat about sort of the typical. One is, what happens if people get in a conflict? And I
have to hop off early, so I wanted to say thank you so much. I'm sad to miss the challenge to go, but I'm going to do it in my head. I just got a little call.
Well, and
All
I'll
right.
follow up with you anyway in our consultation and see what it was.
Yeah, okay, you should. I want you to.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye, Corey.
Bye.
If there's a disagreement or how they take to using a different approach. So we can address those too.
Yeah, if there's an issue or disagreement, and for example, a teen walks out of the room angry and it's hard to follow up on that. And then the other one was kind of related, difficulty coping with change and how to keep them engaged, especially young kids, to which I want to say, they're going to want to engage with you if you're doing activities as opposed to just talking and asking questions.
Yeah, I don't find any more behavior differences than I did before. Okay. Actually, I think I find a little bit less because the activities are not quite as. Melissa, do we need to get you back into a group? Do you know what group you were in, Melissa? And you're muted, so you'll have to unmute yourself for me.
Mari, a lot of times I just look at how many people are in the group and see who's missing, a person.
Yeah. I'll put you in a group if you don't know.
I'm trying to think of the name. Sorry, it's just, it said my speaker wasn't working and then it just restarted Zoom.
Okay, well, here you go.
Is it dark where you are, Melissa?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, she's in another country. We have a couple people from Australia.
Oh, that's awesome. So those are the only 2 really to be addressed, is how do you manage a difficulty and how can you get younger kids engaged? Because they don't like change. So 2 thoughts. One was we should break that slide up where we spent half an hour. You could add a slide for each one of those points, and it would have just been a little more visually stimulating, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We were there for a long time. All the information was great, and they've been soaking it up. I don't think we were off on any of it. And clearly, we don't have questions that we can't answer or that we're not addressing. So I think it was probably all on target. But after 20 minutes, I was like, we probably should have split this up a little bit.
Yeah, I think we did a good job of splitting up who was talking.
Yes, you're really good about passing it back and forth. Super good. And did you see Rhonda's thing about implicit bias signals? Yes, as a matter of fact, we do.
Yeah, I wondered if we didn't give enough individual examples, but what I'm finding with the curriculum is that there really isn't, the virtual tips aren't any different with individuals than with families.
So I think if we were to do it again, and I'm guessing we will, we should spend a few more minutes on activities and say, so here's a classic activity and here's exactly how we would do it. I think we were avoiding that because we were like, oh, they're adventure therapists. They already know how to do the activities. But the truth is that's what they're all nervous about, how to do it virtually. And so we probably could have gotten into the dirt on, maybe 3 activities.
Yeah.
Anywhere near the 60 you're giving them.
Although we have the other video. So when I send out the link, I'll send out another link of those. Here's the 30 activities that you can do with just activity directions that was done previously.
Mm-hmm.
Did you listen in on that one? Where I was like, and you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this. Because 30 activities in an hour.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It was crazy, but I will also send out the link to that. So like if you want to specifically see an activity, that was really done. What we were really looking at were what are some of the other things that we get tripped up in.
Right. So I think you could have given more concrete directions about an activity or 2. And I would have liked to lead a mindfulness because I think that is helpful as well. Just to, first of all, it's good for them.
Well, we can still do a mindfulness, but you have to do like a minute one.
I know. And I was thinking, when you did your sessions, did you just use the first 6 of the family stuff?
Yeah.
So SIFT is in there. So I thought about doing a 2-minute SIFT.
Yeah.
Although,
We've got to get them back then.
I like the smile one too, though. And
Let's just do that one because we were talking about fun and it's faster.
It is faster. And I like it.
They weren't quite done because they're not coming back.
Here
they come. Whew. I love how they just like pop back up. I think that's one of my favorite virtual things. They just like land in front of us. Someone is sideways. How do you get to be sideways?
I don't know. Melissa Gallion, why are you sideways? She doesn't know.
Therapeutically, the metaphor that I would go with that would be really fun.
It makes me want to do it.
Totally. Absolutely. All right. We've got our people back. And I'll share my screen one last time. We've just got a couple of minutes left. And we'll get this started. We already did our challenge to go. I will be asking you about your challenge to go in our consult. This quick guide, you'll just get this. This is just a quick reference. I do want to point out that one of the pieces on this quick guide is managing family adventure therapy. So some of the things that you do about behavioral management. So it gives you some ideas with that. And I also want to say that I don't find any more behavioral management issues happening virtually than I do in the office. As a matter of fact, I find a little bit fewer because I'm not really doing those activities that might promote that kind of behavior management in that way that I would notice it. I also find that for the most part, people are like super excited. First of all, I do this all the time anyway in the office, so I don't know that any of my clients were really surprised, but my new clients that I've started off virtually, they're like, oh, wait, this is how it goes? By session 2, session 3, they're totally engaged. They would much rather do activity. I generally give my clients, give me 3 sessions. If after 3 sessions you never want to do an activity again, I promise that I won't. And in 30 years, I've never had anyone say, please don't do another activity. So I think that's more about our worry about engagement than the reality of engagement. Hey, Bobby, it's you.
Hey, Mari, it's you too.
And here's Bobby's contact information. Oh, and my contact information.
Yep, you're in it now.
You need to email either of us. Bobby, let's end on a mindfulness so that we get that same transition and shift.
All right, everybody, get comfortable in your seats. If possible, put your feet flat on the floor. Take a nice deep breath. Relax those shoulders. Breathe easy. you want a little more energy, do a longer in-breath. If you want a little more relaxation, do a longer out-breath. But right now, if comfortable, close your eyes or let your gaze go unfocused and smile. Do you feel any inner shift? Just by raising the corners of your mouth, did it change how you feel on the inside? You're feeling a smile from the inside out. Our facial expressions send signals to our brain and give us cues about how we're feeling. Sometimes it's just a matter of changing your face. The thing about mindful moments is you don't have to process them to death. You just want to be aware of them. So feel the difference between smiling and frowning, or smiling and being just sort of slack. Don't forget to do your mindful minutes with your clients. We all need to get better at catching ourselves in the moment and letting go. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been our pleasure to work
Thank
with you
you.
today.
And you will get a lot of follow-up materials, so keep an eye out for your email. It will come within 24 hours, so look for it tomorrow. If you don't get it by tomorrow, end of day, please email me, because perhaps I have the wrong email that got registered or something like that. So tomorrow, end of day, you'll have your curriculum, you'll have a sign up for a consultation, you'll have an evaluation survey, you'll have a sheet that gives you some of those tips. I will also give you a link to this video and a link to 30 activities that I demonstrated how to do virtually in an hour. So if you really are like, I want to see activities, you can watch that video and get 30 more activities. But it is just the activities. So that will be a little bonus for you all based on some of your questions. We'll give you some more about how to see that. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.